Let's start now by including our layout and our page template. So far, we've only output plain text here as a C object. I'll delete that completely now. But our page object itself, that remains because we need that now. Everything else, however, I will now write within curly braces. That simplifies the whole thing a bit. Make it a bit larger, and here too we again have our object 10, page 10. That is typically the standard page object, let me say, which one mostly uses to generate front-end output. And if you've already worked with older TYPO3 versions, then you would probably have used the fluid template object now. Small surprise, we don't need that at this point anymore. There's a new content object, a new object in TYPO3.13 named PAGEVIEW. We'll look in the documentation shortly to see what that's all about. And this PAGEVIEW object actually only needs one specification, namely paths. And then I can pass paths here, for example, paths.template_root_paths.100 equals. And this now must be the path to this templates folder here. I can also just copy that again briefly so that I don't have any typos in there. So right-click, then copy path, reference greater than path, from content root. Here's the path from the content root. And this must also begin with xt. Then I paste that in, and the packages /here must go. At the end, we should also add a /. Thus, the PageView object actually only needs the path to the templates folder initially. And if we adhere to the structure here with layouts, pages, and partials inside the templates folder, then everything else is basically read in automatically. I'll save the whole thing now, and let's switch into the backend. I'll clear all caches just to be safe, and let's see what has happened so far. Yes, we see Hauptinhalt. Main content here. That's quite new already. If we take a look at the page source code, then we see, okay, Hauptinhalt is loaded. Okay, let's look again. Where does that come from? We had placed Hauptinhalt here in the template file. The layout isn't actually loaded yet at the moment. And this is now the slightly complicated part, let me say. Although it's not complicated. Once you know it, then it's okay. We have to determine from within the template which layout should be used. I'll insert that up here now, in the second line. Then we use a view helper for that, specifically the fLayout view helper tag. I'll explain shortly what that means. The whole thing is closed with a / and the angle bracket. This is a syntax one might still know from XHTML times. It's applied here when you close a view helper directly without placing anything else in between. Okay, I'll save the whole thing now. We'll also look at the documentation for view helpers in the next video. Using others, you'll see this even better. Very briefly, these view helpers are always called with the same syntax. It always starts with, or usually with, a letter, in this case here F, then comes the name of the view helper, and then arguments parameters are passed. The fLayout view helper is there to render a layout, meaning to output it, and the parameter name passes the name of the file. And since we named our layout default.html, the name here is also default. But without the file extension, we can actually omit that. So if I had now called my layout blablub.html here, then it would say here. I hope that's reasonably understandable now. What is a view helper anyway? A view helper is basically a PHP code snippet in the background to which we can pass certain values and which then returns a certain output, meaning a view, a representation, hence view helper. As mentioned, in the next video we'll look at the documentation for this. Good, I'll save the whole thing now and switch back into the backend and clear the cache again, and let's see what happens now when I reload. Okay, we have the menu here. We now have this marker that I introduced, period, and we basically have the footer line here. We can reload the page source code and I'll activate word wrap here. Then we see, okay, we already have quite a bit of code in there, but where I had Hauptinhalt standing before, now only stands, okay? Why is that? Let's take a look too. If we open the layout file again now, there I had written double quotes, but our template isn't output at all now because this is missing somehow in the front end now. This is now the next, in quotation marks, complicated procedure. When we call a layout, we then have to say again in the layout, at which position in the layout should the output of the template be rendered. TYPO3 doesn't know that by default, meaning for us it's clear now it has to be at that spot. But we naturally also have to tell TYPO3 that. And here we now learn a new view helper, the frender view helper tag. The view helper renders something, it outputs something, and we can pass various arguments, various parameters to it. I'll write that in now at the place where we previously had colon, the frender tag double quotes. We will also get to know other parameters for this render view helper during the course and even during this chapter. This one now calls a section, a block, which can have a specific name. The name in this case is main. That's freely selectable. It could also be called content or Hauptinhalt or whatever. Main is also somewhat, yes, a standard term, one could say. And this section, when we now call it from the layout, is expected in the template. Just by calling it now, nothing happens in the front end yet, or rather we can test what happens. I'll clear all caches again, reload, and now we actually have an error message even. Section main does not exist is written here now. Okay, we are calling the render view helper here. It should render the section main. It expects it in the template from which the layout was called. And here, this section main doesn't actually exist. We still need to define it now, and it would then naturally have to stand here at this position, or rather deliver what stands at this position here. Therefore, we can now write the fsection tag here. But this closing tag, I'll cut that out, paste it here, and everything that now stands between these two tags belongs to this section main. And here, naturally, the content managed in the TYPO3 backend will be output later. But let's see if this works now. I'll save again, clear caches again, and reload. And now that looks quite cool already. I have my menu here. I have the Hauptinhalt, main content, from the template here, and I have the footer. And we naturally don't have any design yet, haven't included any CSS or anything at all. But here too, we now see that the template is rendered here in the right place. Meaning, in the layout, I had removed that marker. At that position, this is simply rendered now. That works so far. And in the next video, let's take a look now at what these view helpers are all about and where you can find information about them.